For centuries, a meticulously guarded intellectual inheritance flowed from the prophets down to a highly structured network of scholars. These were the Geonim, the leaders of the academies in Babel. They operated under a rigorous text-based constitutional framework. This system functioned on a strict premise. Legal disputes could only be resolved through objective evidence and rational jurisprudence. You could not win an argument based on rank or title. Subjective authority carried zero weight against documented, rational proof. But a system requiring this level of discipline eventually bred resentment. The leader of the academies at the time, Rav Shri Gaon, identified an internal threat. He called them the little foxes, seeing them as sly creatures nibbling away at the roots of the academic tradition. These little foxes were a populist movement of merchants and travelers who bypassed the decades of academic discipline required to interpret the law, who had picked up a modicum of renning. They operated on guesswork and personal opinion rather than rigorous evidence. This arrogance represented a systemic threat to objective truth, as their reliance on shallow understanding jeopardized the legitimacy of the entire tradition. By the 11th century, this populist anti-intellectualism had migrated to Andalusia, escalating from a fringe ideology into public disruption. The crisis peaked during the festival of Sukkot. A scholar named Rabbi Samuel Hanagid was walking past a local synagogue when he witnessed a complete breakdown of order, an event remembered as the Day of the Willow. Instead of the quiet hum of study, the morning was shattered by shrieking. A chaotic mob of unqualified, bogus Talmudists burst through the doors of the hall. They replaced logical debate with screaming, deliberately mispronouncing the sacred, precise words of the tradition. The scholars present compared the mob to a bogus willow. Unlike a proper willow that grows carefully beside pure water, this was a wild, uncultivated weed that rejected the springs of traditional, disciplined study. In a legal system where every letter carries precise meaning, throwing out the rules of grammar destroys the concept of fixed objective truth. Language loses its anchor, ensuring the law can mean whatever a person feels it means in the moment. To defend the traditional academies against this tide of chaos, a 12th century scholar stepped forward. Moses Maimonides mounted the definitive defense of objective law. Maimonides compiled the Mishneh Torah as a coherent distillation of the Geonic law. It organized the vast complexity of the Talmud into a single logical code, ensuring the rational standards of the past remained the benchmark for all future decisions. By translating complex jurisprudence into clear, accessible Hebrew, he bypassed the gatekeepers. He placed objective constitutional power directly into the hands of the common citizen. By democratizing the law, Maimonides stripped the uncredentialed establishment of their monopoly on authority. When the common person could read the law for themselves, the power of a centralized, mystical hierarchy began to dissolve. Maimonides' enemies belonged to the same lineage of little foxes, who had attempted to subvert the legal tradition for centuries. They were not a new movement, but a continuation of the same populist assault on objective truth. This diagram contrasts their distinct, conflicting worldviews. On the left, Maimonides' system operates as a flat network of logic and universal truth. On the right, the opposition relies on a strict pyramid of mystical secrets and dogmatic faith, where truth is dictated by rank. These populists attacked Maimonides because his transparent code exposed their lack of intellectual credentials. If the law was accessible to everyone, their absolute grip on power was finished. The anti-rationalists were losing the intellectual debate. They lacked a logical defense against Maimonides' airtight legal code. To win an internal argument, they broke a 3,000-year principle of Jewish governance. They formed an alliance with their greatest external threat, the Christian Inquisition. These rabbis begged the Dominican and Franciscan orders to intervene, officially denouncing Maimonides as a heretic. They launched a witch hunt inside their own community, hunting for internal heretics. In 1233, in Montpellier, France, the conflict reached a dark climax. Framed by the Catholic Church, the anti-rationalists allied with the Inquisition. Rabbi Jonah, a leader of the movement, personally approached the Dominican and Franciscan inquisitors. He begged them to destroy the works of a fellow Jew. To protect their own authority from the threat of transparency, These leaders handed over the pillars of Jewish thought to their historical enemy. In a courtyard in Montpellier, the Mishneh Torah and the Guide for the Perplexed were publicly set on fire by the Inquisition. The fallout was immediate. The unbroken chain of the academic tradition shattered. Rational philosophy and objective scrutiny were driven underground by terror. The magnificent constitutional transparency of the Geonim was replaced by censorship and fear. This history forces us to ask, what is the cost to a society when leaders become so terrified of an idea from within that they invite in their worst enemies to burn it, permanently shattering their own vital chain of knowledge?